Greetings, fellow moviegoers, and welcome to Movie Central, the place to talk about movies, TV shows based on movies, toys based on movies, games based on movies, and rides based on movies. I'm your host, Mr. CCS, and this is my pack gorilla, George. Well, this is it, folks. The big one, the crap stopper, the constipation of American cinema. Wait, when did this become the nostalgia critic? Well, that's what he said in his video, but yes. Last week we covered Batman Forever, and this week we cover the fourth and final live-action Batman film of the 1990s, which not only killed the superhero movie genre, but also Batman in the public eye for years on end. But before we discuss that, let's discuss what really killed this film. So like I said, Batman Forever was a huge success for Warner Brothers, beating out Batman Returns' box office sales, and brought Batman back to the big cinematic event eye. So, of course, based around that success, Warner Brothers decided that it would retain and greenlight another Batman film. A film that would retain both Joel Schumacher and Akiva Goldsman, director and writer, and the same production crew. But there were several mandates that the crew had to follow to meet demand, and the answer why this movie failed comes with those mandates. Allow me to clarify. The first one was to make the movie toyetic. Toyetic means that anything in a movie or show can be designed to make toys. So, for some idiotic reason, the toy company designed a neon Batmobile, silver-plated armor for the Dark Knight and the Boy Wonder to sell more variant figures, and new vehicles to be the big Christmas item on kids' lists. It was not, nor is it, ever a good thing for this to happen, and the fact that Warner Brothers had that mindset is kind of insulting. The second was to have three villains, all staples of the 1990s. The first was Mr. Freeze, who had a great episode of B-Test, so he makes sense. The second was Poison Ivy, because female representation, which also makes sense. And the third was Bane, because of Nightfall. Again, it makes sense, but not all for one movie. Maybe Ivy and Freeze would have worked in one film, but not shown by Bane. We'll get to that in a minute. With three villains, we of course had to have three heroes. And who better than Batgirl, because her B-Test reputation was also amazing. I mean, we also had the lighter tone for family audiences being embraced more compared to the previous one. So needless to say, this is what killed the movie, as well as the whole franchise, and the worst part was that they were going to make even more movies after this. Warner Brothers was very confident in this film that they greenlit a fifth film, titled Batman Unchained or Batman Triumphant, either one, with villains like the Scarecrow, Harley Quinn, and a few others involved. But this film flopped so hard with critics and at the box office that the cancellation was inevitable. Now, Batman Triumphant, as I'm going to call it, seemed like a fun film, so maybe I'll make an editorial on that if I ever bring back those. But I digress. Over 25 years later, is this film as big of a kick in the shin as it was back then? We're going to find out today. This is the most hated comic book movie as well as one of the most hated movies, period. This is Batman and Robin. So this plot is a lot. Gotham is being threatened by the likes of Mr. Freeze, played by the Terminator himself, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who wants revenge for the illness of his wife by blanketing all of Gotham in ice, followed by the entire planet. Randomly. Batman, played this time by George Clooney, and Robin, played again by Chris O'Donnell, have to go in and stop the villain, while also dealing with the beautiful yet dangerous Poison Ivy, played by Mrs. Mia Wallace, Uma Thurman, and her giant blockhead minion, Bane, played by Jeep Swenson, and being joined by a third teammate, Batgirl, played by clueless actress Alicia Silverstone. How much plot can you shove into one 2-hour film and not expect it to suck? Now, as an aspiring filmmaker, this movie is fun, yet painful to watch. The continuity is awful, the writing is terrible, the CGI is inconsistent, the cinematography is hit and miss, and the acting is atrocious. It's a very bad movie. But I wouldn't be lying if I said I didn't have a good time watching it. That said, this is easily a textbook example. Nay, the textbook example. No. My textbook example of how a movie shouldn't be done. So how does that affect the movie's plot? Watching a movie like this unfold is very odd and difficult to keep track of. I can at least say it has its own style at some points, but this is a disaster if I've ever seen one. Ugh! Look, this movie didn't break me as much as Turning Red or Onward or even the last two Superman films. If anything, this is better than those films, but it's still one of the worst made films of all time. But one positive thing about it is that Superman 4 The Quest for Peace makes this film look like Mask of the freaking Phantasm. But at this point, I'm in rant mode, so it's time to discuss the characters and how the movie butchered so many great characters from the comics. So let's start with Batman. Now, George Clooney is a great actor. He was big at the time with shows like ER and would go on to star in big movies like Oh Brother Where Art Thou, Fantastic Mr. Fox, Michael Clayton, and a few others. But his Batman is really awful. Yeah, this is not a new complaint, but not too many people express why he's bad for Batman. He's not playing Batman, he's playing himself, cheeky smile and all. Not even a change in voice. Michael Keaton, Christian Bale, Val Kilmer, Robert Pattinson, and especially Kevin Conroy had this in spades. But Clooney never did. He just sounds like himself, and that comes down to the horrible directing done by Joel Schumacher and the horrible approach to Bruce Wayne. They made him the guy next door. They turned him into a one-dimensional rich guy. And I'm going to say it. They turned him into Adam West. Now, as Bruce Wayne, he's actually okay, but mainly because he pulls off the mannerisms of Bruce from the comics outside of the cowl really well, a warm playboy. But so did Keaton, Bale, and Conroy, so there isn't a real comparison I can make. My point is he's awful, and the suit doesn't do him any favors. I mean, the blue color is okay, but the nipples and the oversaturated butt and codpiece killed it for me. Schumacher wanted to make Batman resemble a muscle-bound Greek god, but I think he just took the mythical part of the character really seriously. So yeah, this is the worst Batman on the big screen, but far from the worst Batman portrayal in live action ever. Because we have Ian Glenn on Titans, who ruined the character, and David Mazouz, who only played a young Bruce Wayne on Gotham and never had a real chance. Also, Adam West had this sleek touch of narcissism after his Batman portrayal and believes he was the best one. At least Clooney has owned up to his mistakes in interviews nearly 3 decades later. That is a feat, if I have ever seen one. Now, as for Robin, he was a good character in Batman Forever, but he was pretty bad in this film. Now, the tension between Bruce and Dick in of itself is a great story idea. It was done really well in the B-Test episode Old Wounds. Here, I can see the real idea, but we never really see these two have a real relationship because O'Donnell's Robin's first journey was with Kilmer's Batman, not Clooney's. Also, there is a ton of moments where he is so over the top whiny to the point where he gives Luke Skywalker a run for his money. O'Donnell is a good actor and he can pull off a ton of stuff, but this is probably one of the worst performances of all time. Is this the worst Dick Grayson ever? No. Teen Titans Go and Titans had worse Dick Graysons. This one, though, is still pretty bad. Oh yeah, they used the Nightwing suit for what reason? I have no idea. Now we have Batgirl. This is not Batgirl. She's only Batgirl by name, but her character is all wrong. She's not Jim Gordon's daughter, but rather Alfred's niece from England without a British accent for some reason. With the surname of Wilson, she races with motorcycles and becomes Batgirl in the third act and does nothing else for the rest of the film. This has nothing to do with Alicia Silverstone, though. To be fair, she was miscast, but the bullying she received on set was horrible. People fat-shaming her left and right is what she had to endure. That's a horrible thing to do, and I don't support that at all. I don't like her as Batgirl because she didn't put on a good performance, not because of her body. She's human, and she's also one of the most beautiful actresses of all time. Anyone insulting anything other than some bad performance is not someone I want to deal with, ever. How did I turn this around to make that point? I have no idea. As for the side characters, Jim Gordon does nothing but be a bumbling idiot for the whole movie. Gossip Gertie is more annoying than ever, and Alfred is well written. Yeah, he was consistently one of the best things about these films. Mainly the way that Michael Goff portrayed him. But he was really good at Alfred in this film, and I can't thank him enough for being the faithful butler and bringing him to life on the big screen for 8 years. Rest in peace. Now we get to the villains, and bear with me, this is a long one. Let's start with Mr. Freeze. As I said in my B-Test Season 1 review, hashtag shameless plug, you'll remember that Mr. Freeze was a nobody villain until Paul Dini and Bruce Timm made him a compelling and tragic character. So it would make sense to bring him to the big screen. Just not with Arnold Schwarzenegger as the character. Arnold was big back in the late 20th century based on his bodybuilding, as well as his roles in Last Action Hero, Total Recall, Predator, and of course, The Terminator and its sequel, Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And he was most likely cast based on that reason alone. But man, did he turn out an awful performance. I mean, the fact that they tried to blend current Freeze with the goofiness made him come off like Otto Preminger from the 60s show. And I hate that version. I mean, come on, the man spends a ton of time hamming it up, spouting ice puns, laughing, having an over the top plan, conducting a choir of Mr. White Christmas, and on top of that, has the backstory from Pitas. No, you can't do that. One or the other. Pick one, god damn it. Yeah, Arnold's freeze is pretty bad, but there was potential of him being terrifying. Taking his performance from the Terminator, giving him the right Mr. Freeze tone, and more importantly, giving in to the Tim Burton dark aesthetic. We could have had an amazing villain, but instead, we have an iconic bad performance, only saved by how much fun Arnold was having while filming it. Oh, and the costume isn't great either. So yeah, Mr. Freeze in Batman and Robin. One of, if not the worst comic book movie villains of all time. Need I say more? As for Poison Ivy, all I have to say is that Uma Thurman's over-the-top delivery killed it. Ivy does have a sexualized voice, but Thurman didn't pull it off. She did it perfectly in Pulp Fiction, but not here. And as for her costume, it looks really good in the first half, but it gets changed about halfway through the film to this crappy thing, and then turns red for some reason. Talk about inconsistency throughout a production. Ivy needs to be on the big screen soon, and hopefully better than whatever the hell that was. And then we have Bane. Bane is easily the most mishandled character in this film. In Nightfall, a calculating and deceiving villain is what we got, as was the case with the episode of BTAS, Batman Arkham Origins, and a few others. This is the man who broke Batman physically, and what we got here is a mindless brute that gives the Hulk a run for his money. The costume and mask look pretty great, and the physicality is amazing, but the personality is just wrong. This isn't who Bane is. This is just wrong. I don't blame Joel Schumacher or Akiva Goldsman for this. WB shoved Bane in at the last second, and Schumacher and Goldsman didn't understand the character too well. So they had to wing it. But whatever the case was, this is still an awful adaptation no matter how you frickin' put it. That took a ton of time that I know I'm not getting back. But before I end this review, we have to talk about the other aspects of this film. Let's start with the effects. I'll restate what I said earlier. The continuity is awful. The writing is terrible. The CGI is inconsistent. The cinematography is hit and miss. I don't think I need to say any more than I already have. Now, you never heard me say that the music was bad, and that's because it isn't. Elliot Goldenthal came back to give us another score, and he did a great job again. I love the Batman motif, and I love the freeze theme he implemented. It's no hard advice, but I like it. Props to you, Elliot. Now, as for the action, did we go back to the 60s? All I remember were over-the-top scenes like the one with the ice skating and the ice cream factory and the goofy final battle in the telescope tower. Yeah, the action's not so great. So overall, Batman and Robin is an abomination. It is fun to watch overall and poke fun of, but it hurts me to watch a movie this badly and incompetently made. It's not only the worst comic book film from the 1990s, but also one of the worst comic book films ever. It's not the worst Batman film ever made, but it's still bad. So I'm going to give this one a 2 out of 10. And I'll end this with a quote from Joel Schumacher. If there's anybody watching this that, let's say, loved Batman Forever I went into Batman and Robin with great anticipation. If I disappointed them in any way, then I really want to apologize, because it wasn't my intention. My intention was just to entertain them. Jeez, that took a lot out of me. But as always, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Feel free to let me know, and tune in next week when I get back to Superman. So, with that said, my name is Mr. CCS, this is Movie Central, and that, my friends, is a wrap. See you next week.